All right, we are jumping into a Dominaria United draft. And yeah, so you could see me using the Alt button, checking my collection status. As someone who plays a ton of Constructed, I rare draft pretty heavily, especially early on. So definitely picking Guardian of Nubidalia here. It's not even a horrible card to start off with. And follow up with a pick two, also rare. This is Rada's Firebrand. A card I got to use in a previous sealed deck and was very, very impressed with. So, extremely happy to see that here. One, because I would have rare drafted it anyway. Two, because it's good. Okay, so now things get interesting. Rona's Vortex seems pretty good. The other cards don't stand out that much, aside from the Black Kill spell. And we're definitely not in any particular color right now, so everything's sort of fair game. We'd like to play our red-white cards, but don't have to at this point. You could see me considering the land for a second, but end up getting Rona's Vortex. Could be like blue-red spells, or blue-white tempo. Never know. Looking at everything, decide the reinforcements are pretty good. It's 2 mana for a 1/1 flash, and it makes another 1/1 when it enters battlefield. Can also function as a kill spell if opponent's attacking with 1 toughness creatures, so don't mind it that much. Okay, so join forces. We have a blue-red legendary uncommon. I think it's called Balmore. Yeah. Banala Sleeper's pretty decent. We have some cards in white, but we're not locked in necessarily. So thinking of upside of blue-red spells, Balmore is like extremely strong. So we weren't losing a whole lot with the other cards available, so decided to just take it and see where the draft takes us. Now at this point, it's pick 6, and we see Tori de Avenant. These names are just unreal in this set. And it's a pretty good sign that red-white's open. It's a decent card. I mean, it gets cut down by like lightning strike and stuff like that, but it's pretty strong if you can attack. And the Tolarian Geyser is pretty strong, but decided it seemed like red and white were flowing to us based on that uncommon. So I'm a huge fan of Griffin Protector. There's a lot of ways to make multiple tokens, and they end up attacking for quite a lot. None of that, but I found flyers to be like very, very strong in this format. No, I like Griffin Protector. I also really like the Keldon Strike Team. 3/1 haste is great for 3 mana, and the fact you can cast for 5 and get 2 more hasty 1/1s is strong, and it goes good with like sort of the go wide theme that red white has. Was considering the Griffin Protector in the last pack as well, but the lower curve item that has upside at 5 mana seems pretty strong. So we're leaning into red white. Like we were hedging for blue red, but it seems like red white is where we're being pushed. Myra's Outrider is strong, so I end up taking it here. Maybe there's an argument for the Kavu at that point. Can't really have too many 2-mana creatures in an aggro deck, so definitely take the Goblin. Alternative Blast is a consideration, but we're not so concerned about tap creatures most of the time. We're trying to get past things. Hammerhand is a consideration for very aggressive decks. We end up getting a second Goblin Picker. And then what do you know? We get a second copy of Guardian of Nubidalia. So that's pretty awesome. I mean, it's an aggressive creature that can stay relevant until late game because you can enlist it to make it a high power threat, and you can basically just arbitrarily instant speed give it indestructible. So you could see at this point putting away the blue cards and fully committing to red-white. Hammerhand, there's a chance it makes it in there, but I have not been super impressed with that card. All right, so I have some decent things, but the thing that stands out is Phyrexian Missionary. Um, Even if we can never ever kick it, a 2 mana 2/3 lifelink is incredibly strong. Like I've already lost sealed games to that card alone without even being kicked. So it's a very strong card. So really like how we've ended up. Broadest Firebrand, 2 copies of Guardian of Benalia, Phyrexian Missionary. It's looking pretty nice. Now this pack is a little bit of a dud. Like we could grab the land for domain. There's Twin Inferno. Checking my spell count, realizing I have no spells right now. It's basically all creatures, so it would be just essentially just a double strike spell. So end up taking the blue-red land. It could work for like the get to amplifier or turning on domain. Here we have the Phalanx versus the black-white land. So we have a domain payoff as well as a black kicker and a blue kicker so far. So I'm not unhappy to take lands right here to get us those basic land types. All right, so another land that could be relevant, but some decent white spells here. So I do like the what's it called, the Cavalier. But there's also like a conditional removal spell in Destroy Evil. And I have not had a lot of experience with it, but it seems good. Like if there's one thing that could stop this deck is like big creatures, and Destroy Evil just gets us right past them at a very efficient cost. Not only that, but certain walls can be high toughness and problematic for us, and Destroy Evil just gets rid of those as well. The walls deck, if they stuff a lot of those 2/4s for 3 in there, that could be a problem for us. Which is also why you want to prioritize flying creatures in this format. The walls deck can struggle against those. Very happy to see Flowstone Infusion. Been loving that card. It's essentially like a high, it's a removal spell, but it's also a pump spell, which is exactly what this kind of deck wants. And to see a second one snap that one off, very happy to see that. It gets rid of early small blockers in the beginning to apply pressure, but it can also punch through that extra damage at the end when we need it. So we could take another strike team or another outrider, leaning to be more aggressive. So I take the strike team, though I would not fault people for taking the outrider and wanting to go like more of a big red route. But you could see we're leaning pretty aggressive as is. Not only that, but I've been really loving the strike team. Molten Monstrosity is fine, but like I've mentioned before, I really like Griffin Protector, and I think flyers are a premium. Not only that, but turn 4 Griffin into turn 5 kicked strike team can really just end games real fast. Very happy to see some half on color dual lands here. You notice me looking at the get to amplifier. If we get enough of these, there is a chance we can kick it. Though with an aggro deck, you have to be careful about overloading on too many tap lands. So, Chris, none of these cards are interesting to us. Put the Artillery Blast in the sideboard. We might play it. But like I said, it feels like it's more for the defensive decks. All right, Academy Wall. Okay, so there are cards that we might want, but I'm firmly in rare drafting mode, so just snap off the golden Argosy or Argosy. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's an interesting one. It can flicker a bunch of things, has sort of like a Yorion ability. So like if you have a bunch of Outriders or the thing that makes tokens, it could be pretty good. So we'll have to see whether it finds its place. Carplusin Forest. Could be useful if we try and splash screen. Okay, so now we don't have a rare, but there's not anything amazing. I have not been I'm not a huge fan of Take Up the Shield. I like those effects when they're 1 mana instead of 2. And so decide to grab the Get To Amplifier, especially because we're actually getting a decent amount of blue splashing going on. So I was going to grab the Cavalier, but then I see that there's a Lightning Strike. So that's premium removal, snapped it off. Fires of Victory, already an okay card and better in blue-red, but we actually are building up towards a blue splash, which will like unlock the more powerful kicked part of that spell. So not unhappy to see that. And the deck's coming together really nicely despite the like rare drafting that we've been doing so far. It's been fortunate that a lot of them that we rare drafted have ended up inside the deck. That does not always happen. But I keep seeing people pass Rada's Firebrand, and I'm just astounded because that card's been really strong for me. So I initially select Flowstone Infusion, but then I take a look at Runic Shot, and I'm not too excited about destroying tapped creatures in an aggro deck, but it is an efficient card, and like it could take down really big blocker or really big attackers against us. So decide to try it. We'll see if we wish that was a third Flowstone Infusion. So we have a third 4-mana flyer. This one has Enlist. I have not played much with or against it, so not really quite sure. But like I said, I found flyers to be quite strong in this format, so we'll snatch that up. And you can see we're getting a little top heavy on our curve. We already have 5 spells that cost 4 plus the 5-mana Outriders. So might need to do some trimming at the end. Things have been going well so far. Heroic Charge is fine. I'm just not in a hurry to pick that up. And we already have at least 3 cards that want us to splash blue, plus the Outrider that likes Domain. So picking up the land seems like a pretty good choice here to sort of unlock the higher power of many of our spells. I was actually struggling with that pick and was very close to picking the white pump spell. And once again, we have another Get To Amplifier. So it's a creature that has a triggered ability that when you cast a instant or sorcery, gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And so if we like Flowstone Infusion down a blocker, it can attack for 3 and it can do some decent stuff. So even if we never kick it, it still could find a home for us. Furious Bellow. Not something you prioritize, but it could definitely make it in the deck. Yavimaya, whatever ape that is. Good option to have if we feel like we need more 2-mana creatures. Yeah, Yavimaya Steel Crusher. I have not found the destroying artifact mode to be super relevant, but you never know. Okay, so now we're just refining. So this is my third draft overall. Had 2 3/3 records before this one, so we'll see how it goes. So just a very medium start to the format. So just scanning over the things. Right now we have to cut 1 card. So decide the equipment just doesn't quite match what we're doing here. Sorry, not the equipment, but the vehicle. I could be completely wrong about that. Maybe it's just strong with the Outrider, but there isn't just a lot that it synergizes with. So I'm checking the creature count, checking the spell count. I'm checking out Furious Bellow and realizing that we are fairly creature dense. Not only that, but we have 3 creatures, the 3 amplifiers that care about us casting spells. That would get really strong with their spell count. So I'm like scanning through the creatures to try and see what should I cut to squeeze in 1 more spell, squeeze in the Furious Bellow. Ultimately decide I can ditch one of the Goblin Pickers to put another Furious Bellow. That gets us up to 7 instant slash sorceries, and another way to like punch through damage through like high toughness creatures. And pretty happy with that configuration right there. We have a pretty strong curve, some reach. We can sort of go wide. So very happy. Definitely not going to play any islands. I'm checking the blue sources right now. So we have three blue sources for 3 and still have really good for our main colors. So jump right into game 1. Now we keep this hand. Unfortunately, I don't have any white sources, but we got definitely some things to do. Okay, so opponent plays the 1/3 artifact creature that can once per turn fix your mana. I've actually been very happy with that artifact creature in my own decks. It has carried some very sketchy mana bases for me. Okay, so they play the Sea Scavenger, which is functionally like a scrying effect that it does. So trying to figure out how to do this. Just decide to attack, since there's a lot of options we can do to mess with them. And decide to take it here. They don't block, so decide to chip in some extra damage with the Lightning Strike on the 3/2. That gets rid of their creature, gets a little bit more damage in. Okay, so they send in with the 1/3. No attacks. So decide that since we're so close to getting full value out of the Keldon Strike team, just to hold on. I know we have another 5 mana play with the Outrider, but it just gets so much better when you can kick it. And we weren't like, this wasn't a super aggro start for us anyway. Very happy to see a second copy of Keldon Strike team, so now we can just kick it. Was wondering about Essence Scatter right there, but it worked. And then just send on in. Okay, so opponent decides to block our 1/2, or do they? Okay, so they decide to block our 1/3, and so they spent 3 mana to block our 3/1, but we still got 2 1/1s left over. And the opponent plays Sphinx of Clear Skies. That is a problem. That's a 5 mana 5/5 ward, and when it hits us, it gets to like sort of factor fiction based on their domain count. Now we had the Furious Bellow, so we were able to safely attack in. The opponent sniffed it out and just sort of ignored the attack. So yeah, so now we have to separate it into 2 piles, and they get to pick one of them and put it in their hand. So decided the 1/1s would be easier to deal with than the 4/4, so tried to make that pile a little more enticing. And they did end up picking it. Okay, so they play their 1/1s. Okay, so this is why the set is so awesome. I know I'm going to have to pay ward here. I'm trying to decide, is it worth kicking this spell? Because then I won't be able to cast as many things afterward. But I decided it was worth it based on the mana cost I was seeing. And you can see here that was a monumental play to kick it right there, because we get to scry 2 lands to the bottom. So it's like functionally like a draw 2 right there, because it drastically improves our next couple turns. So a curious block right here. It seems like Desperation Mode. You would think that they would try to kill our Amplifier with like another 1/1. We had a really strong response to that if they did that, so maybe that's what they were worried about. Anyway, very aggressive attack from the opponent right here, with how much damage you could potentially dish out, so we'll have to see what's going on. So now, yeah, do we haste out the strike team and really go for it here? Decide to do that because we'll still have Furious Bellow up to really dish out some damage. So, okay, so opponent has a kicked stall for time. So they lock down our biggest creatures, but we still get a ton of 1/1s to attack with. And I'm sort of sensing blood in the water at this point, so I go ahead and use Furious Bellow to attempt the kill right here, noting that our other creature get pumped, and it worked. On to the next one. A really great hand. Happy to see Guardian of Nubenalia in an opener. And not only that, but our colors of mana, so it's looking pretty nice. Goblin Picker's nice insurance. If we get flooded, we can just start rummaging. Alright, so Blight Pile. That is unfortunate because it's like a brick wall for a lot of our stuff. So trying to figure out what to do. We can attack in and then like shrink the Blight Wall and then discard a card to give Knight of Nubenalia indestructible, but that just seems like we're pitching a lot of cards just to kill their 3/3 wall that way. The dual land is nice because that's going to help boost our domain for our Outrider next turn. So we could tell we're playing the Walls deck right here. Checking out Blight Pile. Blight Pile is one of their win conditions. Wingmantle Chaplain is the best one, but Blight Pile can get the job done pretty quickly if they have a good collection of walls. Decide just to use the mana and just get rid of their things with actual power that can rumble and combat. Decide that there's no big hurry to play the Outrider, so play another land type. And in case, we have a lot of things we want to kick for blue mana, including our removal spell in hand. So that's why I'm prioritizing getting the blue source in play. Opponent plays Weatherseed Treaty and Tribute to Urborg. That does not allow us to save our knight because it only gives it indestructible, which does not survive, minusing its toughness. Okay, so decide to take the time to play Outrider, especially with no Essence Scatter mana up. But still just sort of awkward. Hold a land in hand to try and juice up our removal spell because it relies on cards in hand. So opponent plays Scout the Wilderness, gets another land, gets some 1/1s. But they're just not really pressuring us, and you could see now the flyer is big time here. They have no way to defend against the flyer. Okay, so the opponent uses their next Saga chapter to pump up their 1/1. They attack in, but we just take damage. They have us under no pressure. Now the Blight Pile will start applying pressure, but we're not too concerned about that. So for mana efficiency, decide just to use a Get-To Amplifier. Playing it pre-combat because it pumps our Griffin Protector, and we can get a blocker out of the way. So I'm bouncing the wall because it ties up more of their mana, and if they want to get more damage with Blight Pile, they have to do it now. So they decide to do it now, and that makes our attacks stronger. So go ahead and send it with everything. And they're just trying to sponge up damage at this point, so they just chump block our Outrider, and we get in for some good damage. So they replay their wall, and they get Shield Wall Sentinel. That is a problem, because it usually starts as Shield Wall Sentinel Chain that ends with Wingmantle Chaplain, in my experience. But now we have enough cards to kill the Blight Pile, and essentially, importantly, reduce their defender count, and we we get rid of like their kill condition, at least at the moment. So shield wall now grabs the Wingmantle Chaplain, the dreaded card of this format. So 4 1/1 birds is, you know, strong, but honestly it's just not great right now. We have the Outrider, which has reach, and we have all these Griffins. So just run out of Griffin, and I know what's like probably the obvious block for them is just to quad block it, but that's just going to exhaust their flyers so much. So very happy with this trade, you know, taking out so many of their flyers. So they go down to 1 more bird, and that's just going to clear the path for our other Griffin in the air. So another shield wall, bracing myself for impact if they have another Wingmantle Chaplain. I'm very, very worried about that. Unfortunately, they don't. They have the small wall, but they do have an Elfheim Worm, something that can apply pretty good pressure on us. So at this point, that we're not getting through on the ground. All of our battlings could be done in the skies at this point. So kick a get to amplifier. Could kill a bird token, but at this point just want to waste their mana and make them replay their worm, take the pressure off us. So opponent's worried about damage at this point, so they just chump with the bird. And I didn't realize it because this is my first game playing against Wingmantle Chaplain. I did not realize initially that it made more birds for subsequent defenders that were cast. So I was astonished when they got their bird in the previous turn. So opponent just plays a Meteorite, takes out our Goblin Picker. That's sort of annoying because that was allowing us to really have a lot of card selection. So they play their Worm again, but they just have 1 flyer right now. Now, Phyrexian Missionary is incredibly clutch right here. You could see me checking my graveyard, but realistically the best thing we can do is to get our flyer again. So definitely kick it. We have our 1 black source, so this is amazing right here. And yeah, definitely grab Griffin Protector. We're not getting through on the ground. It's only happening in the skies at this point. And with the extra mana, play Rada's Firebrand pre-combat to boost the Griffin, of course. Send it in. Yeah, so they block with the bird. And they're hoping just to keep drawing defenders to keep holding off our assault while like their worm kills us or something. Okay, so Chaplain triggers again. Just those dang birds, you can't get rid of them. Okay, so they send in with the worm. Very much doubt they have combat tricks in a wall deck, so just send the Outrider in front. Like I said, we're not getting through on the ground, so it doesn't matter. Now at this point, trying to think, so I play Griffin Protector, which boosts our Griffin Protector, and it may be tempting to run out one of these creatures, but I sense a kill next turn potentially, if they don't draw a wall, because if they draw a wall, they keep getting more birds. But I attack right now, and the opponent's been just blocking every big flyer attack. But I realize next turn we can actually kill them with the 2 Griffin Protectors by playing Guardian of Dominaria and the reinforcements. That'll give them each +3/+3 for a clean 10 damage. So opponent plays a Death Touch insect, but we have Rada's Firebrand to prevent that creature from blocking. Rada's Firebrand is so strong. So play the Guardian of Nubenalia to get the first pump on our Griffin Protectors. So now we're currently dealing 6 damage. And crucially, we can attack with Rada's Firebrand and the 2 Griffin Protectors. Rada's Firebrand will prevent the insect from blocking. And so now we go to the blockers phase. You know, so they're blocking Rada's Fire. They're worried about the pump ability, but we're trying to kill them right now. So we have Resolute Reinforcements for the win. So, very happy to have made it past the dreaded Defenders deck, especially with an active Wingmantle Chaplain. So, this hand's a little sketchy, but we have some decent red plays, so we keep it. And any single white source will help us just immediately keep casting stuff. But just run out the strike team. There's no white mana in sight, so just fire it off. His opponent uses Artillery Blast. Surprisingly, on our 1-2. Passes back. Alright, so still have our 3-1. And we attack again. And they have another Artillery Blast, so that's fine. We have another follow-up with our Amplifier. At this point, would really like to draw a white source. The opponent slams us with aggressive Sabotage. That's pretty tough. Trying to decide what to skip and toss the pump spell on the Griffin, because if we happen to draw like a black source, we could bring it back with the Phyrexian Missionary. So trying to be optimistic, but it's not feeling great right now. We have essentially no pressure on them, and we've lost a bunch of cards. Don't have our mana complete, and wow, we see Sheoldred the Apocalypse. What an absolute nightmare for us. Just going to be essentially draining us for 4 each turn. So we can take down Sheoldred in combat by shrinking its toughness with Flowstone Infusion and pumping our Get to Amplifier, but they know they can just ride out Sheoldred and just kill us just by essentially camping with Sheoldred out. And they wisely do not attack here. They know that Sheoldred will just end the game on her own. And so I'm a little desperate, so I start rummaging here to try and find some way to deal with Sheoldred. Problem is that Sheoldred just kills you faster when you try that. So I keep drawing white spells and no white mana. So try the same trick again. But opponent has already noticed that we have white spells, and so there are white spells that are contingent on... They're white kill spells that are contingent on the creature being tapped. So that's why they are not attacking at all with Sheoldred. They know we're in like a vulnerable position, that they can just ride Sheoldred out. And it's definitely working. Like, the way this game's turning out, they will not need any other cards besides Sheoldred. So they play Lagomos. That's going to accelerate the clock against us by giving them hasty 2/1s each turn. And I'm just in desperation mode right now. I ditched the Flowstone Infusion and incredibly punished. Was not thinking ahead. Was not thinking about the double spell possibility of taking down Sheoldred by pairing it with like a Lightning Strike. So that was massively bad, especially because we don't have white mana. I was being way too optimistic. So that's a pretty big misplay. Add insult to injury, we draw the Fires of Victory, and we would not have enough cards in hand to kill Sheoldred. So it's just one of those miserable games where it not only went poorly, but made some bad decisions. Turns out Sheoldred's strong, so on to the next one. Now this is sort of the opposite last game. We have all white mana and no red mana. Though we do have Guardian of Nubenalia, which is very nice. So opponent snaps off Cast Down, which is at this point just like a Raven's Crime, because it's just going to make us discard. Now discard Kill Shot here because it's just so far away at this point from having any targets. We're in the aggressive. They don't even have any creatures out, so ditched it at that point. And we draw a second Guardian of Nubenalia, which is excellent. Two extremely hard to deal with creatures, so like if they're just a removal tribal deck, they will not be able to beat what we have out. Unless they have like minusing toughness stuff. So we finally find our 4th land, eventually play Griffin Protector. Holding up resolute reinforcements at this moment. So they play a War Leech, a very sad War Leech because it's just a 1/1 right now. They only have a 1 CMC thing in their graveyard, so you could definitely run out the reinforcements, and they're actually like strong attackers right now. Phyrexian Missionary is incredibly strong because we have our 1 black source and can kick it, so opponent's in big trouble right here. They're most likely color screwed. Color screwed worse than us, we'll say it that way. Yeah, Meteorite, and I mean there's just no good choice. I mean they can target Guardian, but we can just save it. At this point, we have no red sources, so I ditched the Lightning Strike. And yeah, they are super dead. And sometimes you win games like that, Alright, so next hand's pretty nice. It's very nice having two copies of Guardian and Dominaria because you see them in your opening hand way more often. So we send it out and get to work. Once again, a no red mana hand, but you have usually more time to develop and draft, so you keep those hands. So we attack, and they don't block with their Root Walla. Just cast the Phyrexian Missionary. I think some people would get too greedy and try and hold on to it to get like value out of it, but we have no dead creatures, and our other creatures not really going to die against them. Opponent attacks in right there. Now, one thing I should mention, I sort of edited past it, but there was a definite priority pass when we had Guardian out and they had a green mana open. So basically sniffed out that they have a 1 mana green combat trick. So that's why I was very confident with this attack that they would do exactly this and would be able to destroy them with the removal spell in response. So just get the clean 2 for 1. That was an arena read. That turn right there. So we're very happy to see this. Them spending their whole turn to get 2 extra damage against us, especially when we have a life linker. Extremely happy to see that. So we're flooding out a little bit, but a second red source is nice because it allows us to empty our hand. And Rada's Firebrand is just incredibly strong and basically going to stop them from blocking like the rest of this game. So opponent's in major trouble right here. Not only that, but Goblin Picker is going to help us keep filtering things. So opponent plays the 3/3, and we have another Guardian Dominaria. So go ahead and pump Rada's Firebrand. Just not going to let the 3/3 do any blocking here. And instead of saving the Picker to rummage, I've decided just to go for the kill here because, yeah, that's what happens sometimes. You win games like that. And yeah, this next hand looks pretty good. I'm very happy to lead with Rada's Firebrand. Like I said, I love this creature. Opponent essentially won't be blocking this in the early game. Tap lands from the opponent are what we like to see. We can absolutely mow down slow, greedy domain decks. So just a casual attack for 6 on turn 3. Opponent passes, maybe still trying to get their mana underneath them. Hard to say. We just hammer them for 6 again on turn 4 and play Guardian Dominaria. Pass. Okay, so they play the Haunting Filament, I think. Anyway, there's just not a lot they can do because Rada's Firebrand is going to stop it from blocking anyway. You don't even need to do anything, so just a casual turn 5 kill. I love playing red-white decks. Like, those kind of kills just bring me a lot of joy. It just speaks to me. Like, just... And I'm referring to draft decks. Like, I just love doing this kind of stuff. Very huge fan of aggro. And you're able to prey on those slow domain decks in this format. Oh, Academy Lore Master. So, my very first draft of this set, I ended up with 2 copies of Academy Lore Master and played some practice games, and it was horrible because it usually helped my opponent more than me, or often did. And that's what's happening here. I have an instant speed card that can cast before the tax comes to play, so I can just draw the extra card. Not only that, but because I have Knight of Nubenalia, every card is essentially a 0 mana indestructible spell for it, so I can just avoid the tax by just activating its indestructible. Anyway, so opponent neglects to draw the card so they can actually deploy their hand here. But that draft deck where I ended up with 2 of those Lore Masters, the practice games are so horrendous I cut both of them and was much better for it. So now there is some decisions here. At this point in time, I want to play some stuff, so I do not draw an additional card because I don't want to get overly taxed. So go ahead and enlist it to attack for 3. That does a couple things. It lets us scry 2. Happy to see both these cards here. Put the Flowstone on the top just to get the interaction sooner. But very happy to see Griffin Protector. And being able to attack for 3 means we get through their 3 toughness creatures. So opponent blocks with the Drake. Like I said, their Lore Master is just fueling us with extra cards. So just go ahead and pitch a Goblin, and essentially turns our cards into 0 mana kill spells. So we play Get to Amplifier unkicked and pass. So we're amassing an army, and they can't even really take advantage of their potential Howling Mine effect. So this turn they do take advantage of it. So they have 4 mana, and that allows them to play a very strong 2 mana creature, the Iconoclast. And trying to decide, yeah, this is a turn to draw an extra card. Because in all likelihood, casting Flowstone Infusion. So play the Lana here. Make a small mistake right here. So should attack with the Amplifier as well. Because my intent was to pre-combat cast Flowstone Infusion to kill their Iconoclast. Which would then pump the Amplifier up to 3 power. So that was a small mistake. Anyway, decide just to not even bother. And so they just block like that anyway. Fire up Indestructible. And ditch Runic Shot. We're the ones on the aggressive. Once again, that's not doing much. It would have been better as a Flowstone Infusion in this game. So they take the extra card and cast a 5 mana Drake, which is fine. Okay, so we draw an extra card. Alright, so this time we draw a Lightning Strike. So having realized what my mistake was last time, I'm going to attack correctly this time with Lightning Strike being able to take down their Drake. So enlisting each turn, and the scries have been incredible, just getting those lands to the bottom. So already that's 4 lands we've been able to put in the bottom. So the Lore Master is honestly just cracking the game right open for us. So do the before blocks, Lightning Strike. So now we have 2 3-power attackers. And the opponent decides to just get rid of the Lore Master at this point. But the damage has already been done. Okay, so they play Jin of the Fountain. Pretty strong. But we have plenty of tricks in hand. So the strike team will be pretty nice. So attack with the Enlist. Gets us some more scrying action. I'm very happy to see Destroy Evil and another Guardian, so very happily keep those on top. The opponent, no fear, sends in for the block. And this allows us to float Stone Infusion to shrink their toughness. And then grant our creature indestructible. Get rid of the amplifier. It's not doing that much without blue mana and without extra spells. So now it's less mana efficient, but decide to play the Griffin here because it's going to get pumped so much by the Keldon Strike Team next turn. So they play the Talos Lookout. Right, pass to us. So opponent's in big trouble here because we can kick the Strike Team and we're just going to shell out a ton of damage here. Gets our Griffin up to a very strong attacker, 5 power. And decide to send it to everyone here because they can block a 1/1 for value, but they're taking so much damage if they do that. Now I actually decide to not pitch our kill spell. The Guardian has done enough damage to them, and honestly the removal spell could help at this point with how much mana they have. Them being green, it could kill a high toughness blocker. Our opponent follows up with Tatiova and has the requisite 7th land to animate one of them. And also casts Navi. So I make a mistake right here and miss lethal. All I need to do is fire off the Destroy Evil to kill their 2/4 attack in. That's game over. So embarrassed to say that I miss it right here. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Was still fairly new to the format right here. Had never played Destroy Evil before outside of this draft. So it was a big disaster because you could see me realizing it right there. Like, oh shoot, that could have killed them. So was worried about that, but ultimately we still got there. On to the next one. Very happy to see Knight of New Benalia. It's done a lot of work for us. So have a sort of spell interaction heavy hand. Just play the Knight and pass. Sorry, not Knight, Guardian and pass. Okay, so they play Phyrexian Vivisector. So hesitancy right there is trying to figure out if they block what to discard. So opponent does no blocks, and we just pass since we have some instant speed things up. An opponent kicks Stronghold Arena, so it's like a sort of a cross between Phyrexian Arena and Dark Confidant, which could be a problem because they can draw a lot of cards off that. So decide to cast the reinforcements and double block just to deny them, get rid of their creature and deny them any card draw off their arena. They do get a scry for their troubles though. Alright, Amplifier. Not horrible, but just not the best. We get in with our Guardian and pass the turn. Alright, they play their Vanguard. And they play the Battlefly Swarm. Pass to us. So we finally draw the next land, which is going to help us double spell. And really trying to just trim down their creatures because I don't want them going off in the arena. They still have a lot of health to play with. But decide to do this because it allows us to get in for a lot of damage. And I make a play here that may be somewhat controversial. So I attack, and once they declare no box, I use the Destroy enchantment mode on Destroy Evil. It deals some extra damage off the Amplifier and prevents them from getting those cards. Who know, at the time it seemed like a pretty good play, but then we're basically like immediately punished by that, or very soon punished by that, because there's just a lot of beefy creatures in this format that Destroy Evil takes out. So opponent still has some things left to do. So they play the Warhorse, and I go ahead and attack with both because we have a pretty safe Furious Bellow, and so this lets us save the Guardian, take out the Warhorse, get a little extra damage. Very happy to see the Outrider. So like I said, the cost of that Destroy Evil play is not apparent yet, but it will eventually become apparent. Play the land and decide to keep the Amplifier in head just to potentially save the Guardian Nubenalia. This is where the problems start happening. So they played the Phalanx, which would have been very nice to kill with our Destroy Evil. So it's hard to know what's right sometimes. So don't have any good attacks anymore, but we could play the Outrider and ding them for 2 damage. And now we have something that matches up with their Phalanx. So they attack in. The Phalanx has Vigilance, so decide to just try and block it here with our 4/4, just to try and clear the way. But opponent has a really clean answer and gives their creature indestructible until end of turn. And so maybe the Destroy Evil would never worked out because they could have saved it. But that's pretty tough because now our creatures aren't really getting through so well. Now Guardian does have Enlist, but our only non-summoning set creature only has 1 power. Alright, so they play that creature, which is like a pseudo Blood Artist, but we're just getting hammered by a 4/4 Vigilance. We could still tank a few more hits, but we need something to happen. The Battlefly is a little tough. Alright, so I make a definite misplay right here. The Protector, I don't want it to just die to the Battlefly. What I should have done is used it to enlist the Guardian. So that was a pretty big mistake there. They might have just chump blocked, but we would have chipped away at their creatures a little bit. So that was a pretty big misplay right there, not sending in with the Guardian. So we have fires. Decide to just play. We can't kick it. Sorry. Contemplating using on the Battlefly, but it's just getting a little desperate and it's just a little tough right now. So just send in with everyone to get the pump value off our legend. But opponent has really good blocks. Like they have multiple Death Touchers. They have a big creature. And we're forced to play things pretty suboptimally. You can see this is where Fire's victory is not great when you can't kick it. And, you know, it's a 2-mana deal 1 damage. Decide to try and save the Guardian here by pitching the Amplifier. But the opponent is ready. And they extinguish the light before it resolves. So their 4/4 is still alive. Cost us multiple cards, and we lose basically all our creatures and don't deal them that much damage. So opponent played extremely well, and we ran into basically every single sort of trap that they set. And so now yeah, so opponent's low life, they're trying to figure out how much to commit to it, but we're in trouble and we just don't get there. On to the next one. Hand is a little bit sketchy. Would love to draw a white source, but hoping that the Goblin Picker helps us get there. Okay, so they play the Yavimaya Ape. Decide to play Picker just to potentially block the Ape. Opponent has Flowstone Fusion. So opponent going aggro. We decide to go back at him with the strike team. But they have the Essence Scatter. Alright. They have a Drake. And so far it seems like opponent has like a blue-red tempo deck. Alright, so we have Get to Amplifier. No sense in holding it to try and kick it because we don't have the land and opponent has us under pressure already. So what we hope to do here is block the Ape and then use Lightning Strike on the Drake so that we can we could trigger the amplifier and kill all their creatures, but opponent has their own Lightning Strike to save their Ape. We still take out the Drake though. And then they have a Goblin Picker to follow up with. So at this point, I opt not to play the amplifier because we don't have any spells to follow up with. It can't block either of them. Now it looks better though, because we can try for another one of those block and remove kind of trade situations. We just want time. We have some good spells. We just want time. An opponent's strategy is trying to deny us that time. So we Flowstone their Goblin, pump up our amplifier, and this time it works and we take care of the Ape. But opponent has a strong follow-up with an Outrider, still assaulting our life total, and we just don't draw a white source or a fifth land. It's looking bleak for us at this point. Like, we do still have an Outrider that maybe we could trade, but they have the Frost Fist Striker, so even if we had something out, that would have locked it down. So this is a Desperation Furious Bellow to try and scry something. Let's definitely scry that tap land away. That's not doing us any good. And we find the fifth land, so we're hoping. But realistically, there's even if the opponent has nothing, there's basically no way we can come back from this, because we need like a white source and destroy evil, and we don't have time for that. And that's it for us. Okay, so ended up going 6-3 with this deck. Yeah, it was very strong, very fun. Like I said, I just love white-red aggro, so whenever I can draft that, it just makes me happy. But yeah, it was fortunate that this time, as we were rare drafting, we were able to just put all the rares into our deck. 2 copies of Guardian of Nubenalia, 1 copy of the Rada Firebrand, and just a bunch of other solid role players. And even got to see, like a light blue splash to get a little extra value. I think a stronger version of this deck probably would not have the amplifiers in it. They were sort of inconsistent. When they were good, they're really good, but was not always the case. Anyway, not bad though.